Welcome to The Writer's Dream. Our show is about authors, how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You may visit us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page called The Writer's Dream. We also are on YouTube, so you can see us on YouTube. And we would be happy to entertain any questions that you have about writing, publishing, and marketing. And certainly, if you are a published author, contact us. We would love to have you on the show. Today's guest is Armineh Helen Ohanian. She is an author of Armenian descent who grew up in Iran, and she has written a couple of books about her experiences in Iran, and she has also written children's books about animals. Welcome, Helen. Welcome, Armineh. I know that the pronunciation of your name is Armineh, not Armineh, because I listened to a book that was written by an Armenian person, and the girl's name in the book was Karaneh.
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 Yes.
And so that's how I knew that. But then I made a mistake about your name anyway. So welcome to the show, and we're happy to have you, and you have so many interesting experiences here. So how did you get started writing?
Well, I started writing when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
I decided, in Iran, I decided to send a children's story to our church magazine called Noor Jahan anonymously. And, I was hoping that it will get published. I waited for a month. And then after a month, when the Noor Jahan magazine came out, I went through the pages with trembling fingers, and suddenly my heart skipped a beat. There it was. My story was there, printed with nice illustrations. So that's how I started. For a whole year, I kept sending stories anonymously, and they got published.
What was the name of that story?
There were different children's stories.
Okay, so do you remember the name of the very
The very first one was, I think it was the Prince and the Frog.
The Priest and the Frog?
Prince.
Prince and the Frog.
The Prince and the Frog.
Okay, so you started at the age of 15.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And I know that you told me that you left Iran when you were 20. So, yes?
No, I was in my mid-20s.
In your mid-20s
yes,
when you left
yes.
Iran.
Yes.
So that you had this burgeoning career, but you had to leave it. And where did you go from there?
Well, my husband got a job in Germany with the U.S. Army.
Okay.
And we moved to Germany for 2 years. And then after 2 years, we went back to Iran again for 1 year. And then my husband got a job in Geneva with Procter & Gamble. So we moved to Geneva and lived there for 6 years. 9 years. After 9 years, we went back to Tehran. And this is when the unrest was starting to begin. Okay. And we lived there for 3 years. And my husband was working for CBS company, and I was also working for him as art and repertoire manager. And we were very worried, thinking if Ayatollah Khomeini comes to power, our lives might be in danger. And luckily, again, he found a job, and we moved out of Iran right in time.
At that time, it wasn't so difficult to leave Iran.
It was starting to become difficult. First, my husband left, and then I had to wait for my children to finish their school year. And then I left with my children, and when we went to the airport, it was like a zoo. People were rushing, and they had, it was very hard to get on the plane. Yes, so luckily, we got on the last Pan Am flight out of Tehran.
Oh, wow. And what year was that?
This was in 1979.
Yes, that was my brother worked in Iran. He worked for Grumman Aviation. And actually, the years that he spent in Iran, he met his wife. She worked for Hughes Aviation because the Shah, who was the leader of Iran at that time, bought a lot of military materials from the American companies. The American companies were there, and what my brother did was he trained the Iranian Air Force personnel to service the planes, to maintain the planes that the Shah had bought. Right. And he was actually in Newsday because in 1979 he was one of the last 10 Americans to get out of Iran.
Well, he was
with their
lucky, eh?
skin. You know, they confiscated everything from him and sent him home. His
wow.
wife was, she got out earlier. I guess they sent most of the personnel because he just stayed there with a skeleton crew to try to secure Grumman's holdings because they didn't really know whether the Ayatollah would be successful. So that was an exciting story, exciting and also very sad because he and his wife loved the Iranian people. They
Right.
loved Iran. They were very sorry to see what happened. And of
Right.
course now Iran is one of the major topics in
The
any
news
news
media.
or about the United States having to do with foreign affairs. And of course, what's the best picture of the year according to the Oscars? Argo. Which
Argo,
is,
yes.
So
yes.
you have, with that setting of how exciting and nerve-wracking and tragic these events were in Iran for many Iranians and certainly for the international community. You wrote 2 books, The Apple Tree Blossoms in the Fall and 9 Years to Freedom. Would you like to talk about these 2 books and tell us what they're about?
Yes. 9 Years to Freedom is about the life of a general, one of the 3-star generals of the Shah, who when Khomeini came to power, stayed in Iran for 9 years. He hid in different basements. People kept moving him from one basement to the other. So, Ayatollah's guards could not find him. After 9 years, he escaped. He managed to escape. And this book, 9 Years to Freedom, is about his daring escape.
Wow.
And The Apple Blossoms in the Fall is a memoir, a creative memoir, which is heavily based on my own life experiences. And I've created a character called Karine, like in Sandcastle Girl, the same name.
Yeah.
But I wrote this before reading the Sandcastle Girl. So, it's the exciting journey of life of this woman who from childhood learns to fight, never give up in life. And for her, nothing is impossible in life. And that's it.
So what happens to her?
Well, it's exactly what happened to me. Well, she was born in a very strict Islamic city in Iran called Iraq. And as a Christian, they were both respected in Iran and both considered as unclean, spiritually unclean. Then she goes to Tehran, and her life continues in Tehran with all the exciting events that happen, and then she meets the love of her life in Tehran, and together they move out, and it's all the upheavals of her life and the excitements that go along with it.
So you're Armenian, and most Armenians are Christians?
Yes, Armenians were the first nation actually to become Christian.
Okay.
As a whole nation, yes.
And so living in an Islamic world, more or less, is pretty much difficult, I would imagine.
Well, in Iraq, it was difficult. When my father was alive, we were well respected. He even befriended Ayatollah Khomeini. In those days, he wasn't Ayatollah, he was a simple mullah. And Ayatollah came and stayed at our house even as a guest. I wasn't born yet. I'm the youngest in the family. So my brother told me this story. I didn't know about it. He apparently came and stayed in our house as a guest. And when he was eating dinner with my father, our servants were baffled. They said, how can a Muslim share food with Armenians? It's unclean. Armenian food is unclean. But he told them, no, these people are not unclean. They have a holy book, the Bible. Yes, it was not always easy because the Iranians consider us, as I said, spiritually unclean. But when we went to Tehran, it was totally different, a total civilized kind of a life.
That's much like, from what I can gather, it's like that in Afghanistan as well. If you go to Kabul, it's a different world from
yes.
the outskirts of the country,
Yes.
Afghanistan. So, but it's difficult living in New York to understand religious intolerance, really, because I think maybe cities foster a feeling of tolerance, because so many people have to live in such close quarters with one another. But it had to be very difficult, and I really wasn't aware. I mean, I knew that the Armenians were persecuted. I knew that because there was an expression that our mothers used to use with us when we were children, eat that dinner because Armenians are starving. And because
Yes.
at that time there was that terrible, it was like the Armenian Holocaust.
Yes.
And so I knew about it, but I really didn't know the details and how terrible it was.
Yeah, but the Iranians were very nice to the Armenians. They always respected the Armenians. Iran is the only nation, a Muslim nation, that allows crosses, one of the only crosses on the churches. Like in Saudi, crosses were not allowed. I mean, if you went to church, the church had to be a simple, ordinary building with no cross on it. But in Iran, no. They are very tolerant. They respect Christians in general, you know.
So then this is something that really the general public is not aware of. Most of what goes on in the Middle East, people don't really understand the history behind it. And so I imagine that you cover that in your books. And I would think that there would be great interest in these books now, simply because of the fact that Iran is so much a part of our foreign policy now. So what inspired you to write the books? I mean, it's an inspiring story, but a lot of people like to just move past. Why did you feel that you needed to tell this story to people?
Well, the 9 years to freedom, we knew the general. We were friends with the general. When he escaped and came to the States, he came and stayed with us for a month, and he told me his story. But he asked me not to write it as it was, because he was still a wanted man. And Ayatollah's men were all over the world. He was afraid. So I wrote a fiction about it was a story to be told. It's a beautiful story. So I wrote about him. There are some chapters which are the truth about him, but in general, I built up a story. As to the apple tree blossoms in the fall, while I was a young woman living in Switzerland, most of the time I was alone. My husband traveled a lot. I was with the children. After they would go to bed, I would sit down and write my memories. And I would write them on loose paper. And I had a suitcase that I would just stack them in the suitcase, hoping one day I'll write a book. And since I've gone through so many exciting experiences, I didn't want to forget them, so I wrote them down. And then when we went to Abu Dhabi in 2007 for a year and a half, my husband went there on business, I carried along my suitcase. I said, now I have time to go through my notes and see what I've written. I read the notes one by one, and as I was reading the notes, my story just rolled in front of my eyes like a movie. I decided to write, and I sat down, relived my life from the day I was born until the day we immigrated to the States. That's how I decided to write. And then I thought, I have a nice story to share with the whole world. And then I also have a story to leave behind for my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
That's so
That's
funny.
how...
Yeah, it's so funny that you should say that. I don't have an inspiring story like that, but I do see my stories like movies.
Yes.
and I write them like movies, and there are parts of my life, my books are all fiction. They aren't autobiographical at all, but there were things in my life that I wanted to capture, and so I put them in the books.
Actually, I was reading about you. My husband and I together, we were reading about you. What an amazing lady. And I saw a lot of you in me. We have the same kind of spirit. We fight. We never give up, right?
Well, I think that's the whole thing that gets you to create something is there's a little flame inside.
That flame, as long as that flame is alive, we'll keep running and getting to what we want to get.
I don't know about you, but it sounds very familiar that I observe things, and when I observe them, if I think they're important, I want to share them. That's the teacher in me.
Yeah.
And
me too.
so the best way to do that is really in some kind of a book.
Right.
And then my major objective, it's funny because I do programs in libraries about how to self-publish, and I talk about my story, and I said, well, my first objective was just to write a book and put it in a loose leaf binder.
Yes.
I didn't really
Yeah.
care about publishing it, and then leave it for my great nieces and
Yes.
nephews and whatnot, because I don't have any grandchildren, but to leave it to the generations that follow,
Right.
because I'm fascinated by stories about my ancestors. So
Where did your ancestors come from?
my family is mostly from Poland,
Poland.
Poland and Prussia, and they left long before there was all the World War I and World War II.
Okay.
No, they left between World War I. No, before World War I.
Before
They were here in the 1800s, so we did not suffer
So
any of
you're-
the persecution that went on at that time.
Yes.
And so we were
You were lucky,
Yeah,
yes.
we were very lucky. But
That's
I
true.
would like to go back to Poland because I know I still have relatives there, but I'd have to find them somehow.
Oh, I see.
'Cause
You don't have any contact with them?
No, unfortunately, unfortunately. So, what was I going to say? This is the way that you write the books, but then you did these wonderful stories about your background in Iran and your Armenian heritage, and then you moved to children's books. Wait,
Well,
actually, you started with children's
I
books.
started with children's book. I wrote the Talking Animals first. And then I was lucky that Quag Elementary School picked it up. They liked it. So they've been using it for their fourth graders to prepare them for their state test. There's a reading and comprehension.
Reading comprehension, yeah.
Yes, they use that. And then a cat came and adopted us, a tuxedo cat, and lived with us for 3 years, and we fell in love with this cat. And then we had to put her down because she had a kidney problem.
Yes.
After that, I decided to make up a story about the adventures of this lost cat, and I wrote Magic. And then I decided to write a series of talking animals, which I've completed the third volume with my grandson, Armineh Ohanian, and that will come out soon.
Oh, that's great. So, so tell us about Magic.
Well, Magic. One day we were sitting on our deck, and this cat comes and starts drinking water from the pool. And she was not afraid of anybody. She just came in and begged for food, and we fed her. And then she kept coming back. And then one day we said, why don't we keep her? Why don't we adopt her? And we did.
Yeah.
She was a wonderful cat.
I love cats. I have two of my own, and I had a tuxedo cat. His name was Punch.
Punch.
And he was a really bad boy, but but I loved him anyway. So what message are you trying to get across to children when they read the Talking Animals?
Well, I'm trying to tell them that animals have feelings. They understand. They're very intelligent, clever, as well, smart, and that they should be nice to them. They have their own life, just the way we do.
It's true.
Look at them like us.
It's true. So you have, this is 2, that's 1, and when will the third one come out?
I haven't even approached any publishers. I might self-publish it because I'm very, very impatient. It's much easier to self-publish than wait for a year, being rejected, and finally somebody will pick it up. As soon I'm going to Oxford University. They have invited me to go for to book reading and talk there. I'm leaving actually tonight.
Yes.
After I come back, then I'll think about publishing the third one, which is called The Story of Adventures of an Acorn.
Of an acorn?
Yes.
Okay. So these are traditionally published?
No, those are self-published. This one is traditionally published.
Okay.
The Apple Tree Blossoms in the Fall.
Okay. So when you were in Iran and you were publishing, you published only through the magazine, correct?
Yes. They published my books.
And so you didn't do any book publishing in Iran?
Myself, no. I didn't do it myself, no.
I was just curious as to what the difference was between publishing in Iran and publishing in the United States, but
exactly
you
the
never had to
same.
worry about it, really.
Well, since the editor of the magazine knew me, so I had no problem. Whatever I wrote, he liked and he published it.
Oh, that's great.
I
That's
was
great.
lucky,
But
very
when you
lucky.
came here, you had to find a traditional publisher for
Yes,
this book.
yes. This one, I'm sure if there are authors listening, they know how difficult it is to get published. There comes a point when you want to die. You say, no, I'm no good. Forget it. All these publishers keep rejecting me. And that's what happened with this book. I was just about to give up and go to self-published, and I said, no, let me send it out again. So I sent it to 5 more publishers. Within 4 days, I got a contract.
There you go. There you go. So it's persistence, right?
Yes.
Well, look at all the famous
Persistence.
authors who
Yes.
will tell you about how many rejections they
Yes.
have. My favorite rejection started this way. I didn't really read your book, but I thought to myself, well, everything that comes after but really doesn't matter because you didn't really
we don't
read my book.
represent this kind of subject. That's
I think most publishers
Yeah.
would not say that, but that was my favorite one.
Yeah.
And and this one's self-published.
Yes,
Okay.
Create Space. Yes, I published.
How did you like Create Space?
I like it. They're
Very-
very good. They're excellent.
That's good. Yeah,
Very good.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Because the authors who are listening, I would think a lot of the people who listen to the show or tune into the show really are thinking about publishing. They either have a book or they have a publishing experience they didn't like, and they're really looking for
Yes.
tips and hints. And these are self-published.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're all Create Space, all 3.
Okay. They did a nice job, actually.
Yes, they're very
Yeah.
good.
So, I'm all self-published. I like you, I'm very impatient.
Yes. Oh my God, it's
I
such
think
hard.
I'm finishing my 3rd book, and I think once I do that, I am going to pitch for an agent. I'm going to look for an agent because I would really like to see my books either on TV or in movies. That's a very, very lofty idea and
Good for
scheme,
you. That's
but
what we should
if
do.
I don't try, so I think that's what I'm going to do. But I like the self-publishing. There wasn't
I like
anything
it
about
too.
it I didn't like, except that you have to do all your own marketing.
Anyway, with the traditional...
Also?
Yes, you have to do your own self. I'm doing everything for this book myself. They're doing some, not as much as I am doing.
Okay, so-
it's the same thing.
So tell me what you do to market.
Well, first of all, I go online. As I was telling today, talking to my husband, the internet, all the information is at our fingertips. You just search
Authors
online.
Stand, you're on Authors Stand.
Authors Stand, yes,
Yeah,
yes, they're
that's
very good.
A very nice website.
They're very good.
Yeah.
You just, go online and be creative. Just keep looking. First of all, LinkedIn is very helpful.
I'm on LinkedIn too.
You're
We have
on
to find
LinkedIn?
each other on LinkedIn.
Yes, we should.
And Facebook.
Exactly, yes, definitely. And then they have all these writers' groups. Join the groups. I have joined all the writers' groups, and through them, you get to learn how to publish, how to promote your books, sometimes free, sometimes with very little, fee. And I use everything, I try everything. But I was lucky to be discovered by Oxford University. Sometimes luck also,
Yes,
comes into
yes,
play.
Yes, and you have an extremely timely
Yes,
topic,
subject. Yes.
which is important.
Yeah.
And so Oxford University, you're leaving for England tonight.
Tonight.
And how long? What's that experience going to be like?
It's going to be, because it's the International Women's Festival, since the book is so much about the adventures, the journey of life of a woman, they picked it up. They voted for this, and they invited me to go and speak about my book and read some chapters. And then they asked me to hold a workshop after the reading.
Wonderful.
To tell the students and the postgraduate students who would be attending there how to write about your self-experiences.
There you go.
So that's what I'll be doing.
So now Oxford University, you're going all the way to England to do
Yes.
this, and we have all these universities around here.
Yes.
It's just given me a great idea. should really pitch these universities.
Probably,
Stony
yes.
Brook, Hofstra, and they all have writing classes.
Yes.
This is something I'm trying to do in libraries. All the libraries here have writers' groups.
Yes.
And I like to go speak to the writers' groups, so that's another way. But
Good idea.
it's amazing when you do sit around the table and you talk to other authors, how many ideas you get.
Yes.
So what I would like to ask you is, as an author, what would you say to other authors to inspire them to keep at their work and tell their stories? What would you say to them?
I'll tell them, never give up. Be persistent. Don't expect for your book to be loved the moment you finish it and you say, this is it. I'll have it published in no time. No, it's not going to be like that. Be patient. Be perseverant. Just keep sending in that query letter to different publishers and agents. One day, somebody will pick it up. But you have to work hard.
Yes, it's a lot of hard work, isn't it?
It's hard work.
And one of my former guests said that you can work hard and you can dot all the I's and cross all the T's,
Yes.
but you need to have someone who anoints you,
Yes.
who believes in you. And I think perhaps you did with your first publisher, and I think also maybe Oxford University is your anointer.
I think so too. I would
I
like
hope so.
for Oprah to be my anointer too.
Well, that was one of my original ideas, was I would write a letter to Oprah about
Yeah.
how I had, created this very good
I
role
think you
model
should.
for girls. Wouldn't you like to? But now she doesn't have a show anymore, so.
She doesn't, yeah, what a shame.
Oh, well, we blew that opportunity. So it was just wonderful to talk to you.
Same here.
I'm inspired. I want to read about your books about Iran. I'm
Thank you.
very interested
Thank
in
you.
world politics, and certainly your children's books, I am going to purchase them for my son's stepchild.
Oh, wonderful. I'm
So-
so happy. I'm so honored to have met
was
you.
wonderful.
And I'm going to order your book and read it as soon as I come back.
Do you have grandchildren?
I do. I have 4 grandchildren.
How old are they?
Well, one is almost 20 at the university. Her name is Alexa. And the other one is 17, Alina. Alec is 14, with whom I've
The
written the book.
14-year-old, she can read my books.
Yes. And I have a grandson who's 8 years old, a great soccer player.